It's fine. Well, we've got a few swap people here tonight.
Yes.
Hi, Penny. Hi, Elaine.
Hi.
So if I forget anything or say it wrong, please feel free to jump in and say a few words.
For those who don't know, SWAP stands for Southwest Action on Pensions. I don't know if you're going to be saying anything about that, Julianne, but
Yes.
yeah.
So, Sigurd, do you want to just give Julianne a quick introduction?
Yes.
And she can get started.
I was rather hoping that we might have a few more by the time we did that. Anyway, let's get started. Yeah.
It's already 10.
Julianne Booker is one of the founding members of Southwest Action on Pensions, which is a pressure group that started during COVID, I think, or just 6 years ago, with representatives from nearly all the counties in the southwest of England, and it's particularly looking at the problems of pensions within the public sector, within the councils. So we've been meeting more or less monthly ever since, and we've had a couple of actions as well. Anyway, Julianne can say a bit more about that. And the rest, of course, there's quite a bit of biography you sent us, which is on the invitation, which people will have seen anyway. So shall we get cracking? And we will start with Julianne. You'll say what you want to say and may share some slides. We can have questions, comments, etc. And at the end, Nick, who's there, Nick from Brighton, she and I are keen to get, well, we're all keen to get a working group on pensions and finance going. And today could be seen as a sort of soft launch of a working group within our grandchildren's climate. So we'll have a few minutes for that at the end. So over to you, Julianne.
Penny, were you wanting to say something?
Just before we start, could everybody please mute so that we don't have background noise?
Thank you.
Okay, well, look, thanks for inviting me. And I also see that Joanna from Wimborne is here, and I know Joanna. So, hi Joanna. And I will start sharing my screen in a moment. And I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes, certainly no more than that, Sigurd. So, and hopefully it will all work. Look, fingers crossed. Share screen. You are screen sharing. There, can you see my presentation? I've got thumbs up. Yep, because I can't see you all. And what I'll do is I'll go into full slideshow. Hang on, slideshow. Oh. You ask. Oh, it does want to do my slideshow for some from the beginning. Oh, there you go. Excellent. Okay, that's my first slide. So, hello everyone. Julianne, Southwest Action on Pensions, SWAP. It's actually quite a nice little acronym, isn't it, really? Because what we want our local authorities to do is swap their investments in fossil fuels and put it in renewable investments. We didn't sort of think of that at the time because it was just Southwest Actions. Now, look, the good news is I'm not an economist, all right? Spent my life in social housing, but I'm not an economist. I'm also not an academic. So this is not a technical presentation. You will all be jolly pleased to hear that. This is just the story of Southwest Action on Pensions, how we came to be and why, what we've been doing, and our successes and learning. It's no more than that. We did start in 2020, and we kind of grew out of the Southwest XR advocacy group. And there, a few of us realised we had some things in common around concern on pensions. So we got together just to look at pension issues. And I do know, because Sigurd had told me, that you're looking to have a pensions and investment working group, which is fabulous. So I've got a couple of slides at the end that might help you start thinking about things other than pensions in terms of some of the stuff you're doing. Well, you just got to start with a picture of David, haven't you, really? And he made this statement back in 2020. Crazy that our banks and our pensions are investing in fossil fuels when these are the very things that are jeopardising the future we are saving for. And we've used that quote, and we've used this picture quite a few times. And there's a bit more on David. He will reappear, because David, in the cardboard cutout form, has been with us on everything we have done. Just thinking really on the global value of pension fund assets, we're actually talking about vast amounts of money. And at the very least, pension funds should do no harm to current and future generations. And that means ending finance to fossil fuel companies and projects that are causing human rights violations and environmental pollution. Just imagine if this £70 trillion could be used to finance green, sustainable investments for the future. That's a vast amount of money. It's a kind of, you can't get your head around the vastness of that. But within that global £70 trillion, Greenpeace actually estimate that about 30% of it is invested in fossil fuel industries. And in the UK, our pension funds, private and public pension funds, about 88 billion of UK pensions are held in fossil fuel assets. Because pension funds are major shareholders in a lot of the fossil fuel companies, you would think they would be a powerful and influential voice in the companies they invest in, because they can vote on company decisions and they can push them to adopt stronger climate policies, or vote against management if they aren't taking the climate crisis seriously. But there's a huge discussion amongst campaigners around that, because whilst they do have a foot at the table, a seat at the table, to be honest, in the years they have been sitting at that table, the fossil fuel industries really have done very little to change their policies and to use their profits and their money for investing in sustainable investments. So you kind of think, why are we having a discussion with them? Let's take our money and get out. And I know that that is one strand of some of the discussions that we've had with our local authority pension funds. Here's just some photos of stuff that we've done in Dorchester. I have to say, our colleagues in the other local authorities have equally done local activities and have done them brilliantly. This was in 2021 outside County Hall in Dorchester, prior to a pensions committee meeting. We did a walk through the town, and some local XR Red Rebels based in Somerset came along. They led our march through the town, and then we went back up to County Hall, and here we are on the steps of County Hall. And we stood, and in fact, standing there, can you see my little pointer on my thing? Can you see my pointer? Great. Standing there, this gentleman here is Councillor Andy Canning, who is the chair of the Dorset Council Pensions Committee. And he's always prepared to come out and talk to us, and is very sympathetic to a lot of what we say, but we're not quite always on the same page. And there's little old me with my bucket there. while we were standing outside there, we obviously had a police liaison. It's important when you're doing things with your banners and your marching to have police liaison. And some of us are very experienced at doing this now. And they will send along a couple of police officers just to make sure that we can protest, and people who are there who might be not very sympathetic can't actually be unpleasant to us. And while we're stood there, the police officer for this particular day came up and asked me and Kaz what we were doing. And we told her. And this is what she said. I've never really thought about it until now. You just pay your pension contributions out of your salary and trust that someone is doing the right thing. When you're busy with a full-time job, picking up kids from school, managing your home, you just don't think about how your pension could be funding climate change. So that was quite interesting that police officer just said that to us. Now, I think I do need to mention fiduciary duty.
Yeah.
Pension committees argue that meeting their fiduciary duty means maximising the value of their investments so they can pay their members. Fair comment, but that's a very narrow definition of fiduciary duty, because they also need to be thinking about the young people who are just starting to pay into their pensions. What will the world be like when they retire? Do they consider fiduciary duty towards those people? Research now shows that switching from fossil fuel investments to green investments does not reduce and often increases the value of the investments. But they're wobbly, that they're a bit frightened to kind of go too far with all of this. Transitioning away from fossil fuels will create stranded assets in the future. Green energy sources are increasing. So there are other options, there are other investment portfolios that our pensions committees can use. And they need to be asking for those and really thinking about their decision making on where they put our money. Some local authorities have made policy decisions to divest from fossil fuels, as well as a number of significant organisations, universities, faith groups, companies and private pension schemes. In fact, over 1,700. And they all have fiduciary duties. So they are obviously comfortable in thinking that they are delivering those duties while they are moving away. Part of the rub when we talk to pensions committee councillors is that they like to talk in money. Making arguments based on morals and ethics doesn't always ring in their ears. They're not always listening to that. So you have to find a way to ask questions and talk to them in a way that they will relate to. And that's a bit of a trick, really. It's a little bit of a skill. And we are now moving towards more a definition of fiduciary duty, which actually includes wider social, ethical and environmental considerations, so long as that does not risk material financial detriment to the fund. And that's the bit that a lot of councillors wobble on. But that legal advice saying you can make alternative decisions has been given to a number of the local authorities who have moved away from fossil fuels. So where we've got a bit of a wobbly council, we just need to give them some comfort that they are okay and they're not, that they are still fulfilling their duties. And their duties extend not just to the people they're currently paying out to, like me, but to the pensioners who are going to be with them and in their scheme in 40 years' time. Now, Brunel Pension Partnership is a sort of pension buyers club, And all of these local authorities, plus the Environment Agency, have used Brunel to manage their pension funds. Brunel is one of 8 national local government pension scheme pools, and Brunel manage about 35 billion of investments for their client local authorities. And again, that's a huge amount of money. And they say their priority is to manage their fiduciary duties to their clients and to make commitments in line with the shared values with their clients. And in that way, aim to help them provide not only for their members' retirement, but for the world they will retire into. So they recognise that. However, despite that claim, they still have clients that have got about £837 million invested in fossil fuel companies. We have not necessarily seen Brunel putting the argument or the point that their clients should actually think about using other investment pots that they manage for their funding. Okay. Swap, just some little logos here of organisations we've worked with and support. We are a non-affiliated network of campaign groups across the counties who use Brunel as their pension pool. When we first started, one of our objectives was 100% divestment from fossil fuels by 2025. Well, we've kind of failed in that one, folks. And to get our local authorities to divest from all carbon-intensive industries and invest in carbon-neutral projects or companies by 2025. What we did succeed in was Brunel Pension Partnerships to adopt and publish a target to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 C. We've kind of recently, we sort of moved beyond that though, really, haven't we? Because I think there's very little faith that any of us are going to stay within 1.5. So that will need looking at again. Local government pension schemes have about 7 million members collectively. That's current employees of the local authority, past employees who paid into the pool when they did work for them, and retired members. And there are 98 localised funds, 98 local authorities that have got funds. In the past, they all managed their own individual funds, with local authorities doing their own investment and management. But in 2015, the government introduced pooling for LGPS funds, local government pension scheme funds, and 8 pools were created to manage them. Some of the local authorities have still got some investments that they manage themselves, which doesn't sit well with government. And in the last couple of years, they have tried through their consultations to move them. In fact, they did give them a deadline at one point, can't remember when it was, to actually put all of their money into the pools. I know in Dorset, just as an example, they're one of the ones with not that much that they're still managing. And what they are managing is some properties they've got, which actually are quite difficult to transfer into Brunel. And Brunel is one of those 8 pools. Now, within the pools, the local authorities should be making the political decisions on where they want their money to go. The reality is that the pool managers have a huge influence on them. And the reality is that very often the local councillors, the local pension committees, don't challenge the advice that they're given from their pension pool managers. and the independent advisors who should be giving them advice. Part of the point was to create larger investment pools to help local authorities reduce the costs of managing their pensions, which was, to some extent, successful. This is a map of the local authorities who use Brunel pension partnerships. So you can see, well, we just pulled it up.
Somerset, Avon, Wiltshire, Gloucestershire, yep. Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire.
Yep. Now, one of the first things we did when we set up SWAP was that we started a website. There's a link to the website. And I saw, Alan, that when you sent out the invitation for tonight's meeting, you did actually put in the blurb a link to that website. So if anybody wants to go on it, you might want to use it as a sort of an example of the sort of site you could set up for what you want to do. And this is just the home page, really. Under the home page, there's a tab for each one of those local authority areas with some with information on their pensions committee, templates and letters they could use to write to their pension committee chairs.
Ring me when you just get near, will you?
So we just put tools on there for people to use. And that was just our 3 initial objectives, which I've already mentioned. Highlights from SWAP. Well, it's been a few years. We're into year 6 now. We were formed in 2020. Between 2020 and 21, we tried to build communication with Brunel, as well as building communication with our own local pension fund committees. Now, we weren't going terribly far with Brunel, who was sort of not really replying to our stuff and not really offering to meet with us. So in September 21, just before September 21, we wrote to them and said, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll come to you. So a whole clump of us went up to their offices in Bristol. And funnily enough, just after doing that, they wrote and offered us a meeting. So it worked. I can see Penny smiling there. It worked. Nothing we've done is that kind of spicy in SWAP. We haven't glued ourselves to stuff. We haven't kind of stopped traffic or done anything that really is extreme in any way. It's all been very, very non-violent, pleasant events that we've done that nobody could object to. So we went up, and I've got a couple of pickies in a minute of that. It was an absolutely brilliant day in September when we went. So we had our meeting with them, and we raised our concerns about their policies, about how they advise the local authorities, about why they're still sitting at the table with the fossil fuel companies. And it was it was quite a productive meeting. And certainly at the end of it, I think they realised that we were not silly little people who were going to go away. And certainly we weren't stupid people. So we certainly left feeling that there was scope to build and continue with our communications. In May 22, we had a clean green pension scheme launch, which was around engaging with our trade unions locally. Now, some of those trade unions have obviously got an awful lot of members in their local authorities who are in their pension schemes. So we wanted to hear from them and make contact with them. And that was a very good event, and we had some good speakers, and I've got a slide on that in a bit. In August 22, we did some training with an actuary called Mike Clark, who runs Ario Advisory. Mike is very knowledgeable. I mean, he is the economist. He is absolutely brilliant, but he can explain things really easy to understand. And he has continued, since we did that first training, to give us tips on how to frame questions at our pension committees and the sorts of things we should be looking at and asking. So we all trotted up to Bristol again, and we had a brilliant training session with Mike. November 22, there's government consultation on the reporting of climate change and risks at pension committees and how climate change and risks should be used to influence investment decisions. And we worked collectively to put in a submission to that consultation on behalf of SWAP and the local authorities in SWAP. In March 23, UK had a Divest Day of Action. Now, UK Divest are a UK-wide divestment campaign. Got a slide on them in a little bit. They had a Day of Action, and some of our members, including Elaine there, was able to go and wave their placards again outside Brunel. But I think most of us had little events elsewhere at the same time. And then in April 23, we met with Brunel again, which again was not an unproductive meeting. It was a little bit, I think we really challenged them on the why you're still sitting at the table, and they sort of bit back a little bit, but we left still talking to each other. From September 24 to April 25, we had a climate and financial risk pensions group for councillors. So we invited all the councillors from all of the local authorities to come, and it started with a training session with Mike Clark, and then they had 3 meetings for them to come and talk about investment issues and concerns. Now, one of the messages that I think at those meetings, Mike very diplomatically and very professionally put across to the councillors that came was, look, challenge. You've got to make the decisions. Don't leave the decision-making to Brunel. Don't leave the decision-making to your advisory people. You have got to make those political decisions for yourself. And to do that, you need to be aware of the bigger picture that's going on. So Mike put that across really well. And we had some good attendance at those sessions, and those who came, I think, really did appreciate it. November 22 saw more government consultation on the reporting of climate change and risks. March 23, the event at outside all over the country, and there was the event at Brunel. Oh, sorry, I went back a couple of points there. Yeah, so the financial risk and pensions group for councillors. January 25 saw another consultation on pensions for the future, and this was where the government were trying to push pension money being used, as it is, for example, in places like Canada, being used for bigger pools and using it for investment locally. So again, we did a really good submission to that consultation, questioning some of the democracy aspects of the bigger the pools get. How do you know, how are your little local things going to be represented, and how the money is then used to invest? And then in September 25, we submitted comments to the government on the pensions bill. And throughout the last couple of years, Sigurd has actually been a real champion for us on the pensions bill, because he's been monitoring how it's been going through Parliament. And he helped, he played a big part in putting together our submission on that and keeping us updated with what's happening. So here we are outside Brunel. There's our Penny, look, in her fantastic plastics and the ocean alarm costume that she's worn a number of occasions on a number of events. And here is Sir David. And opposite Brunel in Bristol is the Unite Union, and they were fantastic that day because we had contacted the officers at Unite and said we're coming up to see Brunel and they are opposite you, and key officers came out and spoke to us, and they let us use their toilets and their facilities in there, and were really fabulous. And then when we got there, there was a few people who did a little bit of a die-in at the front. Here's me and Penny, David again, and this is Alan Mossman, isn't it? Interestingly, up the side of this building, between it was this side, between Unite and Brunel, you can see the builders' shed there. They were doing some work, and all the builders spotted us out there, and they came out and they were talking to us. What are you doing? So we had some good conversations with them about pensions and whether they were in pension funds and what did they think about all of this. And do you know what? They were so keen to have selfies with David. It was absolutely tremendous. So if you want to engage with people in the street and have conversations, take David with you, because everybody always wants to come and give him a cuddle and talk to him. And then this slide was along in 2023, again outside Brunel at the UK Divest Dev Action, and there's Elaine there. Our approaches, I said that we've been really, nothing too unpleasant. It's all been very, very calm. We set up the Southwest Action on Pensions to join with other groups. We've learned from each other. We've done regional actions. We've had public participation at pension fund committees. For all of us, we've all been to our pension fund committees asking questions to raise awareness. So that's led to conversations with pension fund committee members, and some of the pension fund committees have shifted in their thinking and in their approach and being more supportive of funding other sustainable initiatives. Public protests at street level and engagement with local people. I've said already about talking to builders and people that we've been meeting. We've had lots of media coverage, local and regional, and conversations with the public. And we put pressure on Brunel. Letters and protests and seeking engagement with them has led to engagement and taking us seriously. So amongst our achievements, I felt, was that we supported each other as a team. We talked through local blockages and tried to help each other come up with ideas on things that we could do better. We've shared the things that worked and the things that didn't work, and we've learned from each other. We've got a lot of skills in this SWAT group because we have, and everyone has brought their own personal skills to the table and used them for the benefit of all of us. We've done training, so we all feel a lot more clued up and able to talk about these things. We've got a huge database of resources. It's on a platform called Basecamp. So everything we've done and all the national stuff and reports and academic documents, we've got it all stored where each of us can go in and use it for research and use it for the things that we're doing. We shared ideas on pension committee questions and how to word them and phrase them to get the best response we can at the pension committee meetings. And we've built relationships with the respective pension committees. We've done you know, it's kind of, not everyone's achieved all of this. I mean, certainly in Buckinghamshire, our colleague there, Jane, who has come to most of our meetings actually, Jane has done her absolute best there, but the constitution in Buckinghamshire Council is not one that actually encourages public participation at all. So Jane has really, really been on a back foot. And we've acted as a critical friends to the pension committees, and we are still doing that. A couple of useful national campaigns. We've been very linked to UK Divest, who are a collection of people using their connections in local institutions like councils, universities, and faith groups. And they try to drive positive global change and help secure a future free from injustice of climate collapse. And they work with Platform London and Friends of the Earth to do that. They have regular national days of action. They have conferences. Their website, which is why I've put their website there, has got lots of tools that you can use and lots of information. Share Action is one that I think some of us have been using a bit more recently. They've been going since 2005, and they work with investors, policymakers, and companies to help those with the power understand how to use it for the good. So if you fancy going on those sites, there's a lot of really useful information. Just a couple of quotes really from people involved in those. Local authorities do have the power and duty to ensure local workers not only have a pension for their retirement, but also a future worth retiring into. I mean, I'm lucky, I have got a local government pension. And I always say to people, when I first started work with my first local authority, which was Lewisham, many, many years ago now, I did two things on the first day. I joined the trade union, I joined the pension scheme. And although I didn't have children at that time, the thought was in my mind, when I get older, I want to be able to look after myself and be independent. I don't want to be a burden on any children because I haven't got any money. And then, of course, I get to the point where I start taking my pension and, oh my God, I discover that my pension is being used to actually pollute and destroy the world. That's not what I want. That's not what I saved that money for. My pension is my deferred salary, isn't it? I earned that money, and I would like it to be used in the way that I want it to be used, which is one of the reasons I've spent so much time on working with SWAP. And just from Robert Noyes, Friends of the Earth, instead of making risky bets on fossil fuels, local councils should channel the wealth in our pensions to local communities and build a better world. And this was the flyer from our Clean Green Pension Scheme. And we, as you can see, we had some brilliant speakers: Roger Mackenzie, Carla Denyer, Gareth Lowe, from Unite, and Joel Morland, who's a pro-climate investor. And it was a very good session, and we did attract an awful lot of trade union reps and members to come along to that. And if you go onto our website, the link here does still work because I tested it. So if you wanted to have 20 minutes to watch it, you can actually watch the presentations that they did. So linking is not just about linking with the committees, it is about the trade unions, and it is about other members of the pension committees. So where are we now? Well, in May 25, the local government decided that they would reduce the local government pension schemes from 8 to 6. Brunel and its client authorities received letters inviting them to pursue mergers, inviting them in speech marks there because they weren't inviting them. They were telling them that Brunel had to go and they had to move. The letter received by Brunel and the local authorities rejected the Brunel Pool's proposed business case and told them that they had to merge, that they could go individually to different pools or they could go collectively. So the criteria used to select Brunel as one of the two pools to go is still really not clear. And whilst we have been a critical friend to Brunel, when you compare them to the other pools and the work that they've done on climate awareness and on moving funds away from fossil fuels, they've not done badly at all. And it was a great surprise to us that they were one of the ones told that they had to close. So since then, the local authorities in the pool have been making decisions on where they're going to go. They have all now made decisions. And during that period, we in SWAP were researching the other pools. We've been contacting the committee members, giving them information and ideas and asking them at open committee meetings what criteria they were going to use to decide which pool to move to. So again, we were doing the critical friend role and getting them to think about it. Now, I have to say in Dorset, that was quite good really, because I did actually have a pension committee councillor who emailed me and asked me for whatever research we'd done, whatever thoughts we had, so she could ask the questions at the pension committee on which pools to go to. So I think that was jolly good. We're still meeting a SWAP and we will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. We are also contacting the local authorities in the pools that our authority is moving to. So there could be some sort of little swapettes emerging in different areas, and we can share with them our learning over the years, so that they can collectively then work with their new pension managers and do similar things. Now, just thinking a little bit about the private pension schemes, because obviously local authorities is what SWAP is about, but for the private pension schemes, this useful little table from Make My Money Matters, which was done only in February last year, they scored the top private pension providers against climate criteria, climate and environmental criteria. And the one that came out the best was Nest, as you can see, although they only have one green, they sort of overall came out in the yellow. So maybe people around the table tonight, you might, if you're not in a local government scheme, you might want to think, well, what scheme am I in? And you can have a little look. Unfortunately, Make My Money Matter has now closed, which is a great shame because they did produce some fantastic research and information. But their website is still there and everything they did is still there. So you can have a look at it. And one thing that people can do, just like us, this is how we started, is if you are in a private pension scheme, look them up, look up their website, write to them, ask them what their policy is on taking account of climate and environmental issues. Did that flip backwards? It did, didn't it? So then, just thinking about other things, personal finance and other private pension schemes. This information has come from Make My Money Matter. There's a 1921 report they did, just to make people aware really that decarbonising our finances is 21 times more effective for sustainable living than giving up flying, going veggie and switching energy provider. That, you know, follow the money. The money is where it's happening. And I certainly kind of think to myself, well, you know, my pension, if I had a good 20 years of retirement, my local government pension is going to pay out to me a damn sight more than I've got in personal savings. It's my biggest asset. And I think for most people, you don't think about this when you're working. A lot of people don't even think about it when they retire. But your pension is your biggest asset. And at the moment, pension industry funds an estimated 330 million tonnes of carbon emissions every year. And if it were a country, it would find itself in the top 20 carbon emitters globally. Well, that's not good, folks, is it? And banks as well. Banks invest vast amounts of money. As an example, research from the influential Banking on Climate Chaos report shows that since 2015, the year of the Paris Climate Agreement was signed, Barclays has financed around $140 billion in fossil fuels, making the bank the biggest financier of fossil fuels in Europe and the 7th largest in the world. So there was these posters here were from a couple of years ago, where there was a big campaign actually against Barclays and to try and persuade people to move away from them. And there was a big campaign on moving away from Barclays for local authorities, because a lot of local authorities use Barclays for their day-to-day banking. And certainly one of our swap members was really very active in that campaign and took it absolutely to the nth degree. And she totally refused to pay her council tax on the basis that her local authority were using Barclays. And I'm not suggesting anybody here do this, but that individual, she is now at the point where her non-payment went through court, and her local authority now have a charge against her house for the money she owes in her unpaid council tax. It's not that she doesn't want to pay her council tax, she just doesn't want to pay it through Barclays. But there are things that people can do, and certainly we can all look at decarbonising our finances. It's easier now than ever by using this current account switch.co.uk site, and we can switch our current accounts. And some of the better ones, some of the more good-minded ones in terms of where they invest their money, Triodos Bank, the Cumberland, the Co-op Bank, Nationwide, just some ideas there on banks that people can use. And also switching mortgages, or if people are taking out mortgages, thinking about who you're doing it with. And that's simple little things that people can do. And a lot of people don't realise how easy it is to do, and they don't think about doing it. Certainly if anyone ever says to me that they bank with Barclays, I certainly have a very, very friendly but open conversation with them, and people just don't realise. It's like that the police officer that we were talking to back along outside County Hall in Dorchester. People don't think about it. They just kind of open their bank and use it, and they don't have time to think, oh, what are they doing with their money? Well, sadly, a lot of them, like Barclays, are doing some very bad things with their money. So that's about it, folks. Thank you. I
Thank you,
will
thank you very much,
stop
Julianne.
sharing.
There we are. Ah, we can see each other now. Yeah.
Gosh.
Nice to have a hopeful message in the middle of this. And of course, the potential power that dealing with pensions can have. I think Share Action, with whom we do have a relationship, actually, as our grandchildren climate, remind us that 45% of all investments in the world are made by pension schemes. So those trillions that you mentioned, Julianne,
Yeah.
they're very real, aren't they? Anyway, there are probably some questions or comments from round the table that people want to raise. So over to you if anyone has anything.
Any big things and stuff that we've done, Penny Lane, that I kind of forgot to stick in? And Alan's got a question.
Yeah, shall we take Alan first? Sure. Yeah.
Well, no, I just wanted to thank Julia and for a really very clear, coherent, down to earth, and really informative presentation. I mean, talking pensions and money is not always exciting, but this kept my attention, I can promise you, throughout. So I was very grateful for that. I just wanted to inform people. I mean, those of us who have invested in private pensions, I found my pensions were in a company called Mercer. I think it was called Premier Pensions. I hadn't actually put the money in there. That was a result of many pension companies merging and gradually turning into that one. And when I looked at when I asked them for their policy on sustainability, they didn't have one and they could not provide me with one. And so I did research it and I did find a company that did guarantee 99% of their investments to be free of fossil fuels and 100% of their investments to be what they called positive impact, which not only in relation to climate, but in relation to other social matters. That's a company called EQ Investors. And the only thing I would say, if anybody's interested in contacting them and looking at what they offer, is that when I looked at the kind of growth in my previous pension and this one, they're certainly better with this one.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Alan. There is a lot of research coming out now that where companies aren't investing in fossil fuels, in fact, their investments are doing extremely well and better than the ones that are still investing, because fossil fuels also, I mean, I know the geopolitics today and this week has kind of been thrown up in the air a bit, and it's all a bit bloody awful, isn't it, really? However, leaving that aside, there is has been a lot of research that you can still make really good money from not investing in fossil fuels and fossil fuels into the future, because we have got to transition away one way or another, and we are transitioning away, is that they are more and more going to risk becoming stranded assets. And the argument is the right thing to do from a sensible, responsible investment point of view is get out before they get to that stage.
Thank you. Penny, I think you were the next one who had a comment or a question. Yeah, Penny.
Yeah, thank you. Just unmuting. Yeah, okay. I was going to say, if anyone has never done anything about pensions before, you have to find out which local authority you're in and which pension committee you've got in that local authority, and if possible, when your pension committee meets and whether they take questions, because not all local authority pension committees do. In Gloucestershire, we've been very lucky because we've been able to, Alan Mossman and I have been able, and lots of other people have been able to put in questions to our pension committee whenever they meet. They answer those questions, and then from their answer, we can actually ask yet another question, maybe even more than one. And this is not what happens in all the local authorities. Buckinghamshire, for instance, are really bad about this, and they don't even allow people to ask questions or to attend their meetings. So, and Gloucestershire do. So there are all sorts of things that you need to find out so that you can actually start to take action. And another thing I would say is, I have to say it's very political, but what's made a big difference in Gloucestershire and our County Council Pension Committee is having green local councillors. If you have a preponderance of green councillors and Lib Dems, you're going to get action on these things. If you've got Conservatives and Reform, it's a big problem. And you might be able to make some, build some relationships with the people on the pension committee, but it's much, much harder with people of the wrong political persuasion. Let's just put it that way. So if anybody wanted any more information about how to tackle pension committees, I think this is something that our pensions group will be working on, and we might be able to put something out about that with recommendations for how people can actually start acting on what we've been saying with Julianne. Julianne, I must say, Julianne and Kaz in Dorsetshire have done the most amazing job, because they have met with councillors. They've had endless numbers of meetings, and they've made a very big difference in actually building relationships and influencing their councillors. And I just want to give them huge praise for that.
Thank you. Em, I think you have a comment or a question?
Thank you very much. That was really interesting. And as a person who lives in Buckinghamshire, I didn't know it was so bad here. But that's interesting. I was a parish councillor, and I tried to get the parish council to move its funds into a better bank account, and did succeed, at least at that very local level. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. I wondered if there's any link between net zero targets and councils and their pension funds, or if they declared a climate emergency, because I know, Buckinghamshire declared a climate emergency, isn't in theory going to be net zero by 2050. And yet it seems as though the money doesn't, I just wonder if that interacts at all with any of their finances.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because quite a lot of local authorities have declared an emergency. Funnily enough, I did have the stat on that when I was researching this, but I'm sorry, I don't seem to be able to put my hands on it. But despite them declaring emergencies, they have still allowed their pension fund committees to continue investing in fossil fuels, and they have not joined the dots. And part of that not joining the dots is because the pension fund committees have got specific responsibilities around that money. And although they have to consider the council policies, they then go and make decisions based on what they feel is their fiduciary duty to invest where they're going to make the most money. So there's a rub there in local authorities, and exposing that rub and challenging it is certainly a good thing to do at pension committee meetings. And even just because I have done this myself, and I know some of my other swap colleagues have as well, you don't have to limit yourselves to the pension fund committees. I mean, if I'm not happy with the answer that I've got or whatever, I'll write a question and put it to the full council with a statement. Why aren't you, you make this, why aren't you getting your pension fund committee to do this? You don't have to be blinkered. And I think that's Penny's nodding here. This is some of the stuff that we have learned over the last few years, folks. So it's all a learning experience, but if we can share that learning in your working group going forward, then great.
Can I just mention too one very good website I really like around money, which is called mymothertree.com, where you can put in your private pension, your bank account, where you bank, you can put in ISAs, and it'll show you how much is being invested in fossil fuels and it will show you what will happen if you change your account and how much you'll save. And it's just really persuasive, actually. I'm
What's
an
it called
ethical,
then?
mymothertree.com.
My Mother Tree.
Yep.
Okay. Didn't know about that one. I'm going to look that one up. That's a good tip. Thank you.
Good. And also, Ethical Consumer have brilliant research on money in all its forms in finance, whether it's pensions or, again, ISAs, banking, insurance, a lot. Great. Thank you very much. That was really, really interesting. Thanks, Sigurd.
Okay, now Elaine, I think you're in the queue.
Thanks. Just a quick point I was going to make, and then I'm going to have to dip off before the end. Sorry. I mean, we've looked at this from the point of view of people who actually have a public sector pension, either claiming it now or will be in the future, and then also people who are saying, well, don't have a public sector pension fund, but I'm very concerned about the climate. So that's two angles are coming why you would want to lobby pension funds. But if you're talking to other people and you're thinking that might not be enough for them, it's worth remembering the other angle, which is if these pension funds do end up with stranded assets and do end up sort of starting to fail, it's the local authority that has to bail them out. So actually every single council taxpayer could be impacted by this. So sometimes that's quite a useful argument if you're speaking to someone who is a bit concerned, but maybe not quite enough, that could be more of a sort of threatening worry for them. And then I'll just briefly say, I would highly recommend to back up what Penny's saying about going to committee meetings. Julianne, I think Sigurd's almost on the Christmas card list with your committee, Sigurd, aren't you, and the board? They know you so well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good fun as well as really interesting and powerful. They're often quite surprised. They don't get many members of the public turning up. You might be the first member of the public ever to turn up. It's not the sort of committee meeting that gets a lot of attention, so highly recommend it.
Actually, just to follow up, Elaine, on that point, that we think of, for instance, local authority pensions applies only to people who work for a county council, for instance, but actually it's whoever lives in your local authority has a vested interest in this as well. Your own money as a ratepayer is also going into this. Anyway, let's see. Moving on. Patricia, can you just wait a moment? We'll just let Frank. Frank has something to say, I think.
On the personal pension front, anyone who has invested using a financial advisor will know that they will have to go through a process before the financial advisor acts on their behalf. So they will be asked to indicate what level of risk they want and so on. But at the same time, there is the provision there to say what you want invested in and what you don't. And most people, like me, for example, would say, well, I don't want my money invested in tobacco or nuclear weapons. But you can also say, I don't want it invested in fossil fuels. So you can do it through your financial advisor if you have one. That's the first thing. Unfortunately, you may find, as I did, that your financial advisor doesn't get this question from anyone else. So they may not be very knowledgeable. And so you may have to do your own research, which is what I had to do. And as M previously mentioned, especially now that Make My Money Matter is no longer current, something that is current is the ethical consumer. Yes. And that's what I'm using. So the ethical consumer has two things of interest. One is they have score tables for platforms, for pension platforms. Like Standard Life is a pension platform. Fidelity is a pension platform. The government Nest system is a pension platform. So there are scores for them. And actually, they are quite similar to Make My Money Matter. But in fact, there are more scores on the Ethical Consumer website. Moving on from that, the pension platforms then invest in funds, and the Ethical Consumer also do score tables on funds, on the funds. So I just thought people might be interested in the benefit of how far I've got. I'm in the process of divesting my pensions away from fossil fuels.
Well done. Thank you, Frank. But perhaps our new working group ought to take out a subscription to the Ethical Consumer as part of our work.
I think it's well worth the money, and it's not very much money.
No. Thank you. Patricia, I think you wanted to.
I've got to go in a minute. But I have a local authority pension, but I also have an NHS pension, and I'm wondering what that means, how one sort of is in touch with the NHS to ask those sorts of questions.
Well, it's a very straightforward answer, actually, Patricia. NHS pensions aren't invested anywhere. It's a simple transfer from one generation to the next. So if you're retired, it's younger people who are paying for your pension now. If you're a teacher in the state sector, likewise, their money isn't invested, nor is our old age pension. So those three simply aren't invested at all. So don't waste your
Shows
time.
how little I know.
Well, you do now.
Really, really interesting and helpful, this discussion and this talk. Thank you very, very much. I've got to go. I've got to let a friend in.
Okay.
See you all soon.
Okay, Patricia. Penny, did you have something you wanted to comment?
I do, yes. Just one other thing that occurred to me was that a number of the local authorities around the Southwest actually polled or surveyed their beneficiaries, their pension beneficiaries. And Avon and Wiltshire, for instance, actually acted upon what their beneficiaries said they would prefer done with their pension fund investments. So and in fact, I didn't realize, but Gloucestershire did one in 2024. So I only discovered that a few months ago. And if you ask your local authority, have you done a survey of your beneficiaries to find out what their preferences are? You may find that some of them have, some of them haven't, but it would be interesting to know what kind of a survey they put out and what the results were. And if they haven't put out a survey, to urge them to do so, because their beneficiaries should have a say. So that I just remembered that, and I thought I'd mention it.
Penny, actually, that's an interesting point. You can play off one pension scheme against the other. So, for instance, if Wiltshire has been doing some consultation, and let's say Somerset aren't bothered to do it, you can say, well, the neighbouring authority is doing it. What's wrong with you? Any further questions or comments from anyone? Nick, sorry, Julianne. Yes, you got something.
I was just going to say, just an amusing thing really is that Councillor Andy Canning, who's the chair of Dorset Council Pensions, is also a Dorchester Town Councillor. And so I also know Andy through that and stuff that I get involved in Dorchester. So I come across him quite a lot. And funnily enough, this year and last year, I did actually have a personal Christmas card from Andy as our mayor to thank me for everything I've been doing in Dorchester. I just thought that was amusing when you said about Seagate being on their Christmas card list.
Well, yes, lovely. Nice one, that. Shall we, as we have, we don't have much time left now, but Nick, I think we wanted to share just a few thoughts ourselves about the new pensions and finance working group within our grandchildren's climate. been really useful actually picking up on some ideas from what you were saying, Julia, and from some of the comments from others. But if you can stay around for a few minutes, Julianne, that'd be great. Nick, over to you.
Yes. Yep, sure. Thanks, Sigurd. And thank you very much, Julianne. That's been really, really helpful. And everyone else who's been contributing to the discussion tonight, because we are very keen at our Grandchildren's Climate to get a finance and pensions working group together. And this is a great springboard for us to do it from, and gives us a lot of food for thought. We are setting the group up, and we've already fixed the first meeting, which is the 24th of March at 4 o'clock. And if anybody is interested in joining that working group, if you'd like to email info@ourgrandchildrensclimate.org, we'll put you into the group and give you the Zoom link for our first meeting. On that day, I'm actually at 9 o'clock in the morning going to East Sussex County Council to a divestment protest because they have been appalling. So I'll be hot off the press for that. Sorry, Alan's got a comment.
No, it's just, Nick, that we now do have the possibility of folders. So we need to just set up the name of the folder and linked to the way people connect to it. But I'm not exactly sure how to do it, but we'll come back to people about that.
Yeah, we can certainly sort that out. Also, Sigurd and I are going along tomorrow to a virtual launch of something called Stop Banks Backtracking on Climate campaign. So we'll be going to that and getting some ideas and reporting back to you all. So I'm very enthusiastic that we can start to build something up, not only about pensions, but also about the banks. So this group will also include what we might want to do with the banks at their AGMs, and any other issues that we want to consider. We've already, as people know who follow the website, been asking people to change their bank, and we've been looking at things they can do there. So hoping to pull it all together. So please do come and join us, and let's see what we can do to follow up with the good work that has been done by Julianne and her colleagues, and also just see what we can do in terms of following the money and trying to make a difference wherever we can with what's coming down the line to us. So anything anyone would like to add to that?
Yes, please. Just thinking of the future, I think the other focus would be really good at things like, what are they, young people's ISAs and things, or maybe grandparents who are wanting to help their, grandchildren invest or set something up for them, to make sure that kind of thing is green, or to kind of not only do what, say we want you to stop doing this, but also to say to people, this is what we could do, and this is how you can invest in a green way. That's all.
Yeah. Thank you, yes. Yeah, it's when you're campaigning, of course, it's very easy to get into a negative mode all the time, isn't it? We need to do that, but we also need something that carries some hope. And just, of course, you and I, we together with Nils, we look after the website, and we'll need to find a space for things to do with pensions and finance there, but we will. Yeah. Alan. Can you unmute yourself?
Sorry, just responding to Frank's earlier point, that people might find it quite difficult. I mean, I know a number of websites have been discussed about how to divest investments in fossil fuels, but I would just say that what I did in 2022 with EQ Investors, they were extremely helpful and very informative, and they provided all the data that you needed to say where the investments were going. So if
can I add another one to that, Alan, which is called The Path, which is the only financial advisor that has been recommended by Ethical Consumer, and it's the first time they've ever recommended a financial advisor, and they are very, very green in the best way, and will help you do that, if because that's how I did what you did too with my private pension, because I don't have any other kind.
Can you repeat that name, Em?
It's called The Path.
PATH?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And the other one is EQ Investors.
Mhm. Okay, well, well, it could be that we have done our business for this evening. We certainly don't overrun, and there's no reason why we shouldn't finish early if we feel we've done a good afternoon's work. And of course, Julianne has done most of it for us, but inspired us. We have a speaker for next month, 1st of April at 5 o'clock, and she is called, oh dear, Becky Lovegrove, who from an organization called Adventure, and she will be talking to us about particularly aspects to do with health and climate change, and bearing in mind that the NHS and its activities, I learned that from her, a colleague recently actually, the NHS and activities accounts for 4% of fossil fuel emissions in the UK. So, and of course, beyond saying we should abolish the NHS, but it is a big, there's work to be done there. So, yeah. Unless there is anything that's particularly relevant now at the end, I suggest we finish for now, and we'll be seeing you at various stages shortly. Thank you for coming along, and particular thanks to Julianne, and we'll say good night.
Thank you very much. That was great.